Today we're going to make a drink called an Aviation. This drink comes as a recommendation from a viewer who I've never met named David. And he was curious, after watching the Vesper episode, if I had a recipe for an Aviation. I have to admit, at the time I didn't have a recipe for an Aviation. I then borrowed a bottle of this creme de violet and started playing with it. And so I've come up with a recipe that I really like for my own spec. It uses this Nolet's dry gin, which is a very floral gin, as well as the creme de violet and some maraschino liqueur. Also, perhaps a little bit less traditionally, I am going to balance it with a little bit of simple syrup. I think you could up the maraschino or up the creme de violet, but I think using a simple syrup helps balance it in a way that doesn't push the herbal qualities over the top, but we can get to that in a little bit. This cocktail was actually first created over 100 years ago by a New York bartender named Hugo Enslin. I think that probably what we're doing here is pretty faithful to the original, but you can never tell with recipes that are this old because some of the ingredients that they had access to then are probably slightly different. And something I think that's important is that even though a lot of the images that you'll see if you search for an aviation cocktail in a Google image search are going to be super bright purple, this drink doesn't really come out that way unless you either use a purple gin. There's one from Empress called their Indigo Gin that is very purple. But yeah, the spec, if you want to make it as purple as you see on a Google image search, it's going to be very violet forward. I think people tend to do that for the images, or maybe they'll touch them up a bit. I think that the cocktail that we're going to make today is actually a little bit more of a bluish gray color, which if you think of the name of the cocktail in aviation, seems apt for what you might see out of a window if you were flying a plane. Let's make the drink. You'll see soon. All right, so let's get into making this Aviation. Today I'm going to be using Nolet's dry gin, which is a dry floral gin from the Netherlands. I know that Aviation gin is actually a popular gin for this cocktail because of the name. This is one that I particularly like because of its floral qualities. I think it works great with these two liqueurs, and we're going to use it today. But if you have Aviation gin at home, I know that's super popular, or Hendrix, or Ford's, or Bombay. Tanqueray is usually what I have on hand. They all work great. They just have slightly different properties, whether they're going to be more citrus forward or juniper forward, or in this case, floral and a little bit of peach forward. 2 ounces here of gin. And then that part's pretty standard, but generally what changes a little bit from recipe to recipe is going to be how much creme de violet or how much maraschino liqueur, or some recipes omit the simple syrup altogether. What I'm going to be doing is balancing the lemon juice with the same volume lemon juice with sweet stuff, if you want to think about it that way. So in total, I'm doing 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice with 3/4 of an ounce of total sweet ingredients, which are going to be split equally. So I'll do a 1/4 ounce each of creme de violet, maraschino liqueur, and simple syrup. First, 3/4 ounce of lemon juice, 1/4 ounce of this maraschino cherry liqueur, 1/4 ounce of simple syrup. This is just a 1-to-1 simple syrup, 1 part sugar to 1 part water. And finally, a 1/4 ounce of this creme de violet. If you make this cocktail and think you could use more of this violet character, feel free to amp it up. Like I said, you'll certainly end up with a more purple drink than we will today. Oftentimes when I make a drink, I'm more interested in the flavor profile than the color. I say that even though I made an episode about red and blue tiki drinks, but this one I think is plenty of creme de violet with just a 1/4 ounce. We'll grab some ice and we'll shake. I've also got my coupe glass here, straight out of the freezer, and we will be garnishing this one with a cherry today. So sometimes I have Lichardo cherries, which is the same brand that makes this maraschino liqueur, but today I have Amarena wild cherries and syrup. Let's shake this up, and then we'll be straining it into the cocktail through a fine mesh strainer also, so you're going to want to serve this drink up. We'll strain into our glass right here. This is just to get all the little ice chippies out. And we'll garnish, like I said, with a cherry. Try to pick one out of here with this pick. Sometimes easier said than done. Here we go. And here you have an Aviation. Let's give it a try. Yeah, that's really nice. You get a little bit of all the character. You certainly get the floral quality, the fruit. I'd be hard pressed to call this drink purple. I do think the cherry in the bottom kind of helps insinuate that a little bit. Also, this glass has a little bit of a gray, kind of smoky hue to it also. So I think that's further pulling it down to be gray. I'm not sure what will transmit through the telephoto powers of camera capturing, but it does have a little bit of purpleness to it. Certainly nothing, like I said, like what you'll find on Google image searches. I know there's a liquor.com recipe that is super vibrant purple. And I think when you use a purple ingredient, there's probably a desire to have that drink be purple. I do think, though, if you want the drink to be much more vibrant, that indigo gin is probably going to be the way to go rather than using a ton more of this violet liqueur, unless you just love it and really want to go that route. But I think flavor profile wise, this is balanced really well. It tastes like gin, you get a little bit of the cherry quality, nice floral notes. The sweet and sour balance is also just where I want it. So feel free to play with that as well. If you want a drink to pop a little bit more, you may be able to skip the simple entirely. But I also think that simple syrup can give a drink a nice roundness or a heft on the palate, which isn't just sweetness, especially when you're pairing it with something like lemon juice or lime juice. I dig it. That's all for the Aviation Cocktail this week. Thanks for watching. David, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it's something like what you had in mind. Tune in next week. We're going to do a special episode on some drinks that are named after cars. Some of them are well known, and one of them I actually created on my own, but cars are another hobby of mine. I enjoy Formula One racing, as well as just automobiles that couldn't be purchased and driven on the road. So we'll get into more of that next week. And feel free to keep sending in recommendations or questions that you'd like to see an episode on in the future. At the end of the day, drinks are for fun, and my goal with this channel is to teach people enough so they can share that fun with the people they love. Come and be amazed at what you can do. Cheers.